디테일, 그렇죠? 되게 섬세하게 작업한 것 같아요. 여기가 그 국립현대미술관 관장님께서 얘기하셨던 그 서도 작가님의 작품 맞죠? 이거?
네, 맞아요. 여기 오니까 그 세계적인 미술관, 프랑스 퐁피두 센터 부럽지 않죠?
그러니까요. 근데 언젠가는 우리도 프랑스 작품을 만날 수 있게 되지 않을까요? 그렇죠?
기획전 같은 거 하지 않을까요?
프랑스 작품도 있었으면 좋았을 텐데 대사님이랑 좀 공감대 형성도 할 수 있고 그러지 않을까요?
역시 꼼꼼하세요, 조 PD님. 이번 주 게스트를 위해서 화제거리를 찾으셨군요. 이번 주 게스트는 주한 프랑스 대사님이시죠? 제롬 파스키. 프랑스는 우리나라 수교를 맺은 나라 중에서 가장 오래된 수교국이라면서요.
뭐 여러 가지 역사를 같이 했겠지만 이런 건 잘 몰랐을 것 같아요, 다들. 그 일제강점기 때 상해에 임시정부 있었잖아요. 근데 그 우리나라 임시정부가 프랑스 조개 지역 내에 있었어요.
저는 알고 있었는데.
조개 지역이 뭐예요?
그러면 다른 나라에서 치외법권을 행사할 수 있는 구역이지.
그럼 프랑스가 우리나라 독립운동을 지원한 거네요?
그런 셈이지. 근데 또 우리나라랑 프랑스는 교류도 되게 많잖아요. 우리나라랑 무역량이 세계 7위더라고요.
근데 프랑스 하면 우리는 사실 전통을 많이 생각하잖아요. 그리고 뭐 프랑스 요리, 치즈, 와인 같은 걸 생각하는데 우주항공이나 유전자 공학 같은 분야에서는 첨단을 달리고 있대요.
그러니까 그런 디지털 산업 분야를 이끌고 있는 플레르 장관님이 또 한국 계시잖아요.
맞아요.
빼려가는
아, 네.
왜 예전에 KTX 처음 개통할 때도 프랑스에서 기술 지원을 받았다고?
아, 진짜요?
맞아요. 그리고 1903년에 우리나라 최초의 등대, 8미도 등대 그 조명 장치도 프랑스 제품이에요.
그런 역사도 있었어요. 우리나라와의 인연이 정말 깊네요.
그리고 또 최근에 부산국제영화제 때 대사님 인터뷰를 보니까 프랑스가 한국 영화를 알아준 세계 첫 나라래요.
얼마 전에 개봉한 설국열차도 해외 국가 중에서는 프랑스에서 제일 먼저 개봉했잖아요.
그러니까 역대 프랑스에서 개봉했던 한국 영화 중에서도 누적 관객수가 아주 제일 많다고 들었어요.
예술 분야 얘기하면 주한 프랑스 대사관도 얘기를 빼놓을 수가 없을 것 같은데 한국 건축사에서, 특히 현대 건축사에서는 큰 의미를 가지고 있대요.
1959년에 건축가 김중학 씨가 지으셨는데 이게 광복구의 현대 건축사의 걸작으로
그 최근에 박 대통령님께서 유럽신문 마치셨잖아요. 그때 프랑스에서 프랑스어라고 정직하게 스피치 하셨는데 스피치 해보실 때는 어떠셨나요?
아, 예. 20분 동안 하셨잖아요.
네.
발음이 정말 좋았었던 것 같아요.
대통령이 젊었을 때 프랑스에서 유학했다고 하더라고요.
맞아요. 영예 시절 때 그르노블 대학에서 6개월 유학했었는데 그 프랑스 유학 시절이 인생에서 가장 자유롭고 행복했던 시절이었다고 하시더라고요.
그래서 이번에 유럽 순방 때도 프랑스를 제일 먼저 가셨었나? 근데 그 자리에 대사님도 계셨었대요. 그러니까는 대사님한테 그 현장 분위기 같은 거 같이 들어봐도 좋을 것 같아요.
그래요. 과거에서부터 현재 그리고 미래 잠재력까지 풍부한 문화유산을 가진 프랑스과의 만남이 정말 기대돼요. 뭐 키워드 많이 나왔으니까 정리를 해볼까요? 오케이, 제가 제일 먼저 하죠. 그 일단 오래된 인연이 있으니까 우리나라와의 그 120년의 동행이라고 할까요?
그 프랑스 하면은 되게 문화가 풍부한 나라잖아요. 그래서 그 문화의 근본이죠.
좋아요. 그리고요?
그리고 하세요.
제가 할게요. 그 이번 프랑스 순방 그 이야기가 정말 꼭 듣고 싶어요.
박 대리님 뭐 얘기하시려고 그러셨어요?
나 그거 정확하게.
우린 정말 팀워크 너무 좋은 것 같아요. 서로 이제 생각같이.
텔레파시로.
그러니까.
France conjures up images of wine, great cheese, and great art. But France is also the cradle of cutting-edge technology and science. And while the French are proud of their cultural heritage, they also have a deep respect for other cultures as well. See France in a whole new light as we talk with the French ambassador to Korea, Mr. Jerome Pasquier. Ambassador, thank you for coming on Heart to Heart.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, I know this is your first time on Arirang TV and first time on Heart to Heart, but this was not your first posting to Korea, is that right?
Oh, no, I arrived first time in Korea in 1988.
For
Arirang TV didn't exist at that time.
Right.
Just on time for the Olympic Games. I was lucky enough to attend the opening ceremony, which was really a huge success.
Right. And you haven't been back since? Is this your first time back?
I spent 4 years in Korea at that time, in 92, and I came back just 1 year ago.
Right.
And I could see tremendous changes in 25 years. And I was very happy to come back. I think I'm very lucky to be able to compare what Korea was 25 years ago and what Korea has become now.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've noticed? I imagine the landscape has changed
Well,
a lot
the
as
landscape,
well.
buildings, more cars and so on. But I think the way of life has changed quite a lot. If you walk in the streets of Seoul now on Saturdays and Sundays, you see many people walking with a family, some music groups, concerts, and so on. That didn't exist 25 years ago. People were walking always.
Walking to work or walking to school.
Exactly.
Right. Well, relations between France and Korea, of course, have also developed rapidly over the past 20 years. What are some of the most noteworthy areas of development, do you think?
Well, in the recent year, we had a lot of contacts, of political contacts, high-level visits. Your president, Madame Park, visited France in November. The French Prime Minister came to Korea in July. We had several ministers, including Madame Fleur Pellerin, who is a Korean-born minister, who paid a very visible visit in March with a huge media coverage.
Yes.
You may remember that. So we had a lot of contact at this level, but we have also many more economic relations, cultural relations, scientific cooperations. But I think we still have a large margin of possible progress. So we have to work hard to develop those exchanges in all fields. That was decided between our two presidents in November. And we have to increase trade, to increase investment, to increase student exchanges. This is also one of the big changes now. Several hundred French students come to Korea every year for 6 months, 1 year period. And that is a very positive development.
Why do you think they're coming in so many
Because they're
numbers?
excited to come to Korea.
Yeah.
Now I think really 25 years ago, Korea was not very much well known in Europe. This has completely changed now, of course, with K-pop, with Psy, with Samsung, smartphone, and so on. And now more and more French people are really willing to discover Korea. You may know that the number of French wanting to learn Korean language has also increased dramatically. They even have been obliged to refuse some candidacy. There were too many candidates for learning Korean language in France those days.
Are we talking about hundreds of students or thousands? Or?
Thousands, not more for the time being, but
Wow.
it will go up. And there are also many more students who want to discover Korea, even if they cannot speak the language. They are very impressed. You know, Korea is a unique success story. What you did in 50 years, economic development, democratization, is really unique and is a model for the world.
Well, of course, Korea also had some help from France. I mean, our relations go back 130 years, but
Diplomatic relations.
Diplomatic relations.
Diplomatic relations.
But France, of course, also took part in the Korean War, and even before that, you also helped in the democratic process. Could you tell us a little about how you support, or France supported, our independence movement?
Yes, you may know that after the First World War, there was a provisional Korean government that was created, and this government was hosted in the French concession of Shanghai.
Yes.
That means that it was under the protection of the French police. So that was a big help from France to this provisional government. But our relations, in fact, began much before the diplomatic relations that were established in 1886. Before that, we had quite a lot of French missionaries who came to Korea. You probably know that Christianity was brought into Korea by Korean people who brought Bible in Beijing. But after that, they asked the Pope to send priests. And the Pope decided that it would be the role of the French Church. So it was French Catholic missionaries who came to Korea at the beginning of the 19th century. And for example, Myeongdong Cathedral was built by French architects.
That's wonderful. So that was the first contact between the
That
two
was
countries.
probably the first contact. After that was the diplomatic relations.
Right.
We had this provisional government in Shanghai, and of course France also was important part in the Korean War. We had a quite significant battalion, and there is even one interesting story. There was a French military leader, general, called General Monclar, who was so much willing to come to Korea and participate in the war that he had to ask to be demoted. Because with the size of the battalion could only be under the command of a colonel, not a general. And he was already a general, so he had to ask to be demoted to colonel for the time of heading the French battalion in the Korean War.
Why was that? Do you know? What prompted this interest?
I don't know exactly, but he was apparently very, very much willing to come and to take part in this fight for freedom of South Korea.
Oh, that is an unknown story, I think, to many.
It's an interesting story, isn't it?
It is, yes. And fast forward, about 200, 300 years now, of course, and we have Madame Park, President Park Geun-hye's recent trip to Paris, to France, and you, of course, were there along the way. So could you give us a first-hand sort of witness account of how the reaction was? We got a lot of glowing reports here from the Korean media, of course, and especially when she made the French speech as well. What was your reaction? What did you see?
Well, I was there,
Yeah.
so I really can tell you exactly how it was. And really, I think it was a very successful and quite emotional visit. You know that Madame Park had studied in France for some months, not very long, because she had to come back because it was the time of her mother's assassination, but she spent some months in Grenoble, and she apparently kept a very good memory of that period. And it was the first time she was back in France after 40 years. And I think that the fact that she chose France as the first leg of her first European tour, well, that was a token of appreciation. And we really took good note of that, and it was very much appreciated by French people. The fact that she made a full speech, 20-minute speech in French, and in a very, very good French, that was also very much appreciated. The French people always like when foreigners speak French. I suppose that was not that easy for her after 40 years, but we appreciated that very much. And more seriously, she had very good meetings with the president, with the prime minister. The atmosphere was very cordial. She also met a lot of business people, and she also met some French fans of Korean dramas.
That's right. Young students.
Young students who knew everything about the Korean dramas, much more than I can know, really.
And she spoke with them in French as well?
I wasn't there that time.
Oh, you weren't
so
there.
I cannot tell you, but I wasn't there. But I had also the chance of meeting her even before her inauguration, and we had a small discussion in French, and she's really very much able to speak very good French.
You mentioned before that the French are very appreciative when people speak French, but some people in Korea, of course, were wondering, why does she have to speak in French? She's the Korean president, and she should speak in Korean.
But she was talking to a French audience. So I think it's good gesture when you address people, you want them to understand you. So I think it's normal if you can. I'm very sorry, I cannot speak in Korean. If not, I should do that. But for her, I think it was a really good gesture to make the speech in French.
Well, President Park, of course, has stressed culture as a national priority, and of course, France is a leading powerhouse in culture and arts. Where do you see our relationship going in terms of collaborating in the field of culture and arts?
You know, if I understand well, the three main priorities of Madame Park are economy, culture, and science.
Yes.
And in France, my president speaks of economy, economic diplomacy, importance of science, research and development, and culture. So we have the same priorities. So there are very, very good reasons for us to develop our relations. In the field of culture, I think that French culture is quite well known in Korea already, but many Korean people think that France was an important cultural country in the past, but we are still very active in the cultural field, and I think it will be important for us to show this to Korean audience. And in the other way, of course, Korean culture is much more well known and appreciated than some years ago, but there are still many, many of Korean culture aspects that we can discover in France.
What are certain aspects that you think could be appealing to the French audience that they don't know of yet, aside from Korean dramas and Korean pop? And
They already know Korean dramas, they know Korean pop, they know quite well Korean movies. Korean movies are very successful in France. Indeed, they're very good. You have a very good movie industry. But I think, for example, literature, it's difficult because of translation.
Yeah.
But now, for some years, you had very good translation of really excellent Korean writers, and Korean literature is now knowing a quite big success in France.
wow, okay. And reverse French cultural aspects that you think that the Korean people don't know much about and you wish they would know more about?
Well, I think many things are very well known, but we have to insist on our French contemporary culture. We have a lot of very young, active, good artists, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of interest in Korea if we can show what they are doing now.
Okay. Well, relations between the two countries are flourishing, and our cameras followed Ambassador Pasquier as he took part in a Korean-French cultural exchange. The relationship between Korea and France will grow stronger. 60 businessmen and diplomats gathered to toast the French-Korean friendship in an event arranged by the Korea Image and Culture Institute.
When you agree, when you understand one another's culture, that means a long-term friendship. So I think for French people, for Korean people, cultural identity is extremely important.
CC's CQ program aims to raise the cultural quotient of Korea. Ambassador Pasquier, who has always emphasized the importance of cultural cooperation, was a member of the program's 16th session. He even received the CQ Culture Award for his efforts.
많은 사람들이 여러 가지 정치적인 현안도 얘기하고 경제 규모 확대도 얘기를 하지만요, 무엇보다도 국민과 국민들 간의 마음을 가깝게 하는 거는 문화교류라고 저는 생각을 해요. 그래서 문화를 알아야지 상대방의 마음까지 이해하고 받아들일 수 있기 때문에 그래서 문화교류가 중요하다고 생각합니다.
Cultural exchanges have never been more important. So Ambassador Pasquier is working hard to strengthen French-Korean exchanges. Ambassador Pasquier, I heard that you recently received an award by the CQ program, the Korean CQ Cultural Award. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, I don't know if I deserve it.
I'm sure you're very deserving.
You should ask to the CQ people. But it's true that, well, I have personally a strong interest in culture. But I also think that the French policy that developing cultural relations between countries is very important. If you have good cultural relations, if people know well the other people's culture, that's a very good basis for strong relationship. You can have some small problems in political field, economic field, but if you have good cultural relations, that's a long-term firm basis for excellent relations. So it's very important to develop cultural exchanges.
And you
both ways.
And you received this award for your contributions to promoting cultural ties?
I suppose, and this provided an encouragement to go on promoting those cultural ties.
What is the CQ program? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it was created by Professor Che Jong-hwa, you may know, and who is the president of CC, which is an organism in charge of promoting Korean culture abroad. And I think Professor Che and CC and CQ played a very useful role. It's important for foreigners. It's not that easy for foreigners who arrive in Korea to know more about Korean culture. There is a language barrier, some cultural differences, and what they did is really helping those people to know more about Korea. And CC really made a wonderful job in improving Korean image everywhere in the world.
I think I remember one foreign ambassador who said he came to Korea as an ambassador of his country, but he leaves Korea as an ambassador of his own country and also Korea. Is that sort of maybe the purpose of the CC program as well?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So
No, I'm sure, but I have to remember always that I am the ambassador of France. So my first job is to promote France in
course.
Korea.
Yeah.
But if I can do also some help to promote Korea in France, I shall be very pleased to do it.
Well, because you were also here 20 years ago as the cultural counselor, you must also be very familiar with the Institut Français. I don't know if I said that right. Could you
Excellent. Your French is perfect.
Much too generous. I know that it moved to a new location in Namdaemun. Are there any other changes? Does it have more of a selection of books or materials for the general public? Can you tell us what changes have come about?
We had a lot of changes because Korea changed. The French Institute played, I think, a very important role in Korean cultural life in the 70s, 80s, because it was the only place at that time when you could have access to French books, French papers, see French movies.
Yeah.
I think the great majority of those so good Korean directors went to the French
That's right,
Institute,
yeah.
and many of them really discovered international movies in the French Institute. But nowadays you have a lot of cinemas, you can have access to many things through internet and so on. So the role of a cultural center has changed completely. And now we have Mediatek, a place you can borrow books and papers and magazines. But the French Institute is mostly organizing events in local places. It's much better, I think, to have a lecture, a play, a show in a current cultural place where you have access to a much bigger audience. There is no real need to have our own premises now. So that's why we changed completely the situation.
And do you still get many students? I remember I used to go to the old Institut Français as well, but you still have many visitors, many students coming by?
We have many visitors, but by organizing events in other places, we have access to many more people, which is, of course, our main aim.
Especially French movies, I think, have played a huge role in influencing the current generation of directors that are active in Korea. Of course, Bong Joon-ho probably was one of them.
Yes.
And his Snowpiercer, of course, was based on a French graphic novel. And France was the first country where it opened overseas. It was a critical and popular hit here in Korea. How was it received in France?
It was released quite recently in France, but I read many critics in magazines, film papers and so on, and the critics were very positive. So I'm sure it will be a big success in France too. You know, many people go to the movies in winter time, around Christmas, when Christmas holidays, and I'm sure that it will be a big success during Christmas holidays in France.
Now, this was a French graphic novel.
Yes.
It's not a new novel, was it? It was quite
Not
old.
at all,
But it
not
wasn't
at all.
made by, it wasn't interpreted or made by a French director
I
ever?
was quite surprised to learn about it because the graphic novel was published something like 30 years ago in France.
Is that right?
It was very successful at that time, but nobody thought about shooting a movie from it at that time. And I think it's a very good example of this cultural cooperation. It's a Korean director shooting a movie from a French novel, also with some international actors. And that's what is culture today. You have to work in cooperation between different countries now.
Well, aside from culture, of course, we mentioned that another similarity that we have in terms of the government as well, the focus right now is on science and technology. And France is a little less well known for its cutting-edge science and technology, which is surprising because if you think about it, I mean, even in Korea, we can see signs of that. You mentioned the Myeongdong Cathedral, maybe not its
100
architecture,
years ago, but
100,
okay.
but also more recently KTX, of
Yes,
course, and the
exactly.
Paltang Dam. So could you tell some areas where French science and technology is really taking off and is being very competitive?
Well, for example, in science, in mathematics, the French School of Mathematics is #1 in the world. You will have in Seoul next year the International Congress of Mathematicians, and I'm sure there will be a big number of French mathematicians because they're really at the top level. We also are quite good in the energy sector, and Korea is part of a very big research project called ITER, which is under construction in France, about nuclear fusion. that form of energy that will happen after the classical nuclear fission energy, what is done now in the nuclear plants. So that's two examples, but we are quite good in a lot of sectors now. There was recently a report by Thomson Reuters news agency, so not a French one, making a list of the top 100 best innovators in the world. And in the list, there were 12 French companies. France was number 3 after Japan and United States.
Wow.
But before all other European countries. So we are really, probably much better than many people think about it.
So there's a big emphasis on science and technology from an early age in French schools? Because I think many Korean parents think it's either one or the other. If you're in science, then you're in science. It's very difficult to grasp these sort of philosophical and cultural soft elements, but
I think it's more and more important to have a balance between culture and science. Culture is very much about creativity, imagination. And a good scientist needs imagination. So I think the best scientists are also people who are interested in culture.
it's a very good answer.
No, I think so, really.
Well, I know that the two countries are also cooperating on joint research projects, especially universities. Could you tell us more about some of the programs?
Well, we have several programs with several universities. For example, the French Prime Minister in July visited one lab in Yonsei University with a French company, Air Liquide. But there is also another one at Ewha University with CNRS. I recently visited with one of your team. And we have several joint research centers in Korea. And I think that's very useful because Korean and French have different ways of approaching research. And so they are very much complementary.
Could you tell us some more details about the programs, what you are researching, or is it top secret? Or?
It's not very top secret, but the one we visited with your team is about, I don't know, dynamic quantic imagery, something like that. I don't understand anything about it. But apparently it's very important, and it was very useful for new technology, for new screens and TV screens and so on.
Okay. Well, perhaps we'll understand better after taking a look at this footage of the joint research project between Ewha Women's University and a leading basic sciences research center in Korea. The CNRS Ewha International Research Center, also known as CERC, brings together scientists from Korea and France. The French ambassador and his party paid a visit last November.
Very often people, when they think about France, they think about a country of culture, romanticism, tourism, which is okay, very good. But we are also a top-level technological and scientific country. But too many people don't know that, so I thought it was a good idea to show this aspect of our cooperation with Korea.
Established in 2010, CERC is partners with the National Center of Scientific Research in France. Together, they host academic conferences and encourage scientists to think creatively. CERC is a driving force in international collaboration. As an alumnus of École Polytechnique, an institute renowned for its world-class scientists, Ambassador Pasquier appreciates the need for cooperation between basic sciences and technology.
This is some mutual collaborative work, and then in case of France, we know it's world top leading in the fundamental science research, while Korea has a very strong background in applications and manufacturing, etc. So France want to see their fundamental research get applied to real manufacturing. And in Korea, we want to learn a little bit more fundamental science to have a firm background of these applications. That's why we are mutually beneficial each other.
CERC's main area of research is quantum dynamics imaging and its applications. The ambassador had a chance to observe where the action happens.
The ambassador emphasized the excellence of fundamental research in France and also very high technology development in Korea. And he knows this mutual collaboration is mutually beneficial each other. And in fact, he wants to see more just scientific research activity going on so that real collaboration will be promoted.
We wish CERC success and hope it can contribute to the creative economy that Korea and France are pursuing. Ambassador, CNRS is the largest fundamental science agency in Europe, and France has also produced the greatest number of Nobel laureates in science. But some people are saying that there's no money in fundamental science. What would you say to that, as also a graduate of the École Polytechnique?
Well, basic science is essential. All the big discoveries come from basic science. The problem that, of course, you cannot calculate immediately what will be the benefit, but it is extremely important to devote money and a lot of activity to basic science. I mentioned the project ITER, huge project for nuclear fusion research. This is an example of basic science. It costs big sums of money, but it can solve the energy problem of the planet, so it is extremely important.
For simple people like myself, I think it's hard to understand how basic science affects our lives. You mentioned fusion nuclear energy, but isn't there a backlash against nuclear energy, or is fusion nuclear energy completely different from nuclear energy as we know it?
Oh, it's a completely different system.
Okay.
In the present nuclear energy, you split atoms. In the fusion, you will join atoms. So it's a different system. But it's very complicated. I'm not going to enter into explanation. But about the importance of basic research things about medicine, for example. The first vaccine experiments, nobody knew that that would lead to vaccination and elimination of some diseases. So it's really important and impossible to know in advance what you will do with the basic research, but it's very important. Yeah.
And the third area, of course, that we need to work on strengthening our ties is economic cooperation.
Sure.
And in a previous interview, I noticed that you mentioned that boosting economic cooperation is your main focus during your stay here in Korea. France, of course, is the top 5 economy in the world. How are you recovering from the economic crisis that has really gripped most of Europe? I know the past 2 years were a little bit tough. How is it recovering now?
Well, we went through a quite difficult period, clearly, but now things are improving. Recession is finished in Europe. You may remember that 2 years ago there was a lot of discussion about the future of euro. The eurozone could collapse and so on and so on. Nobody is speaking about that any longer. So now we are really going in the good direction. The trend is really good. It will take some time to repair all the problems created by the crisis, but the situation is improving slowly and steadily. The French government has and is implementing structural reforms. What the government is doing now is to try to implement those reforms through agreement with trade unions, with civil society. So it may be not as spectacular when you take decision, you impose it, and you have huge strikes and so on. Everybody notices this. When you have an agreement, well, it even doesn't appear on the front page of the papers, but it's much more useful and efficient. And this is what the French government is doing now. For example, we had a very important agreement on pensions recently. We need to reform our pension system. But this agreement went quite smoothly because the trade unions, business people agreed with the government. And so this will be a very important reform that will be implemented and will help to solve some of our structural problems.
So you think it's easier to maybe come to an agreement during the tough times when there is a common goal that trade unions and also the government, you're working towards a common goal, of course,
I'm not
right?
sure it's easier.
No.
Because if you can give some more money, that also helps in a good period of time. But I think it's very important to reach agreement, to discuss, to have cooperation. And this is what the French government is doing right now.
So maybe we won't be seeing those mass strikes or
That's a story
the
of the
street
past now.
rally?
In fact, if you look at statistics, the number of strikes in France has decreased dramatically and is not bigger than in other European countries now.
That's very good news. Well, history shows that France has always been very good at overcoming adversities, of course. Where do you think that strength comes from? Is it the willingness to talk to people? Is it, where does that innate strength come from?
That may be one reason. I think we have also a very strong sense of national identity. France is an old country, like Korea, and it has built centuries after centuries, but there is a strong feeling of citizenship between French people. We all share some very important values from the time of French Revolution and even before, and so there is a strong feeling of unity among people. So when we have a problem, everybody is fighting to overcome the problem.
At the same time, you're also very welcoming of other people as well. I mean, for two examples, Picasso and Chagall, they weren't born in France, but they became famous in France and they were accepted as one of your own, really. So there's a great sense of national identity, but also welcoming of other people and other cultures.
Of course, that's very important. And Picasso, Chagall, others, Van Gogh, Modigliani, for example, they brought a lot to French culture. They enriched French culture a lot. So it was extremely good for us to welcome them and to have them in France. And we are still doing that. We had a lot of Korean artists who spent time in France after the Korean War in the 60s, in the 70s. Artists like Kim Won-ki in painting, for example. Kim Chong-yeol, who is still alive and lives in France and Korea. Kim Jong-up, a very famous architect who, by the way, built the French embassy in Korea, was a pupil of Le Corbusier, a French architect. So we had a lot of exchanges, and that's, I think, good for Korean culture and extremely good for French culture.
What about people who aren't artists or aren't part of the sort of cultural scene? How accepting has France been of people from different nationalities as well? I know that being in Europe and having the open borders, of course, there has been an influx of people coming in from different countries. How's that forming France right now, or reshaping France?
I think we had this during centuries. That's not a new phenomenon in France. What is new probably that now we had some more difficult economic times, and in difficult times, of course, there are more problems. But the great majority of foreign people who come to France, who immigrate to France, are very well accepted, and after some time they are completely integrated in the French society. Of course, this is not the case of everyone. And when you have one problem, well, that attracts a lot of attention. But if you look at the fuel landscape, globally, I think the French integration policy is really successful.
And do you think it can also work for the Korean government or the Korean society as well? Of course, we're having an influx of multicultural families and people in our society as well.
Well, there are differences between France and Korea, of course. I'm not going to give any advice to the Korean authorities. That's not my job. We are always pleased to welcome people who can come to France and look at how we are dealing with this problem. And we have problems, and not everything is perfect in France, clearly. But I see no reason why Korea couldn't succeed in integrating quite well the foreign people that are more and more coming to Korea. And that's normal because you had a huge economic success that's attracting people. You have also maybe a demographic problem, which is a difference with France. In France, we have a quite high birth rate till now. So I think it's important for Korea to deal with this immigration problem, but I'm very confident. You showed in the past that Korea can really overcome any difficulty and very quickly.
Well, that is an area where you can maybe give us advice. The demographic problem. France managed to, of course, overcome its low birth rate with a very pro-birth policy, and you're seeing the effects of it, of course, now. And will France continue with that policy, you think, into
Of
the
course,
future?
and for the time being, we are number one in Europe with the demographic rate, 2 children per woman, which I think is a huge asset for long-term French economy. About Korea, I'm not going to give advice. As I told you, everyone can come to France, look at what we did, and maybe if it's a source of inspiration, okay. What was important in France is that we tried to allow women to be at the same time mothers and to keep their work by developing some canteen and crèche and system to help mothers to have children and work together. If you oblige women to choose between work and family, we see this in other European countries, well, the result is a low birth rate.
And you came up with this policy after asking the women themselves what they wanted to do. How did France come up with this policy? I mean, it must not have been easy. It's very costly as well.
It's not easy, it's costly, but it's also very, what is important is the reaction of the people. And in France, it is completely accepted and normal now for a mother of young children to go to work, to have a normal working life at the same time that she can take very good care of her children. If you culpabilize mothers when they work, well, you will never get good results.
Well, we hope that Korea will be inspired by France's example.
That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion. And I'm here with Ambassador Jerome Pasquier of France. We'll be right back after this.
Quite a lot of very interesting things. You have the traditional Korean culture.
Personally, are you most
pottery,
interested in that?
Traditional sculpture, temple, that's very nice. It's always a pleasure to go to the mountain and discover old temples. I'm very curious, so I'm interested by any aspect of Korean culture. But really, no movies, you have really very good directors.
We recently had a French invasion of sorts. We're talking about food, of course. We had many famous French chefs come here to open up their own stores, but also to teach French cuisine to the locals. What makes Korea a good place to introduce French cuisine, do you think?
First of all, it was a very friendly invasion.
Of course. Very welcome.
I hope so. I think I've already said that. I think we have many similarities between French and Korean people. And I think French people like Korean people. Well, for them, food is quite important. We attach great importance to food, good food. Not only the food also. The food is a reason to meet, to have the family meeting together, talking together. And so we share this love for cuisine, good cuisine. And since Korean people are interested in good cuisine, I understand very well that they're interested by French cuisine. And French cuisine is developing quite a lot in Korea. But we have the same phenomenon in France. The number of Korean restaurants in Paris or in French cities has also increased a lot in the recent years. And French Korean food is more and more well known, but I think that French people have still a lot of things to discover in Korean cuisine.
You would think that the flavors are very different.
No, that's what is interesting.
That's interesting.
Difference is good.
Difference is good. At the same time, difference could also put people off when it's too different, when it's too foreign and it's too alien. Like kimchi, that's our representative food, of course, and it was recently listed as an intangible cultural property by UNESCO, but the spice, the pungent smell can put, frankly, a lot of people off. But do you think more people are coming to understand it and willing to give it a try?
I think French people are very curious. They like to discover new things, very different from what they have usually. So, no, they're not afraid of kimchi. Of course, sometimes when I have some French friends coming in Korea, well, I tell them, well, take care, not too much.
Have your water.
But they want to try. They want to try, always. And in fact, kimchi is very good. And you have many, many sorts of kimchi. Some are quite hot, I have to say, but not all of them. No, it's really interesting. By the way, do you know that I was invited by your agriculture minister to make some kimchi with him 2 weeks ago?
How did that turn out?
It was very funny. I didn't taste my kimchi. I'm not sure it was that good, but it was very interesting. And it was a good idea to invite foreigners to this type of event.
Will that inspire you to try it at home?
Not
Try
yet.
making, no, maybe one day. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on our show. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you a wonderful time during the rest of your stay here in Korea.
Pleasure was for me, and I wish Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Thank you very
Thank
much. And that was our conversation with the French ambassador to Korea, Mr. Jerome Pasquier. You can watch a repeat of this on our homepage, arirangtv.com. Merry Christmas, everyone, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.